Hey guys, it's Greg back again tonight with another winning characteristics walkthrough video. I wanted to focus on CRSR tonight, back when it IPO'd in October timeframe in 2020. And the reason I wanted to do this is I wanted to see if I could kind of create a template through this example and a couple of others to try to figure out how I can trade younger names that show relative strength during market corrections. And so an idea of this currently is Bros, BROS, and it's performed incredibly well over this time span. And I wanted to see if I could find any common characteristics or traits that would help me trade this if market pressure decides to lift. So first and foremost, I think something that's very interesting right off the bat with CRSR was that it was an incredibly liquid IPO. So if we look here, we had 12.75 million shares traded on the initial IPO day, and then for about a week straight, we had over 1 million shares traded every single day, almost 2 weeks before we had a dry up. So this level of liquidity on an IPO is super impressive to me, and I think is something that immediately stands out and should be watched for if desiring to trade IPOs. To move on, I wanted to just go through the same kind of mindset that I've gone through in every video. So we know this stock can run. That's the character, as we've seen right after the IPO. And then let's kind of look at what RS is doing as well. So RS right out of the IPO, good little slope here, die down, and then we get an RS zone that starts to be created. As the market sells off, CRSR, its price either holds steady or increases, obviously showing relative outperformance to the market. And this is pretty key because we get an RS new high over here with price as the market is correcting. So that's a huge tell saying institutions are in the stock, they want to be long, there's demand, and let's see how this plays out if we can get long as well, if market pressure decides to lift and our risk management processes allow us to get long as well. So we know this thing can perform. We've seen it create an RS zone. So now let's try to see where we can figure out if market pressure lifts, we get a follow through day over in this area, if we can get long anywhere. So if we go down to price and volume, immediately on this dry up and consolidation we see during the, at the start of this market correction, we get the 18 round hold, which shows institutions do not want to let it go any lower than this level. They're accumulating shares on weakness. And, again, it's just showing us that there's institutions in this name. Moving on, we have the highest volume since IPO day characteristic, which is originally what caught my eye. And obviously, we've talked about this before, but it's an incredibly important characteristic where there's new demand coming to the stock that is showing some sort of change, fundamentally or news or whatever the case may be, where institutions need to accumulate shares in a large fashion. And so kind of incorporating the study I've done this year on the high volume close, I just wanted to test out and see how this name acted on the high volume close. And, you can anchor a little level here at 22.97, which was the close of that day. And it never closed below. So even on November 2nd, when it looks like it did, it actually closed right on that level. And I don't believe that's a coincidence. That's someone saying, I want shares at this point, and going forward, it's not going to go below this level. And some more confluence here. The prior high of this little structure was also tested and held on both instances. So again, we're seeing some demand come in where this RS zone was created, and if market pressure lifts, we should see something like this, and that's exactly what happened, as we can see with this SPX line in the back. So to move on here, we've kind of understood what the stock's character is. We know it can win. Now we have a way where we can kind of manage risk and get long. So we're in the name. We're seeing multiple days of accumulation as we're running up, and then we're also noticing that this 10-day is becoming support. On earnings here, depending on your cushion, you might have had to sell out, but it was a potential rebuy back off the 23 EMA intraday. So while the candle probably looked pretty poor at this point, some sort of reversal took place, and we'd have to see intraday where volume came in and see if we could get in and manage risk in that session. But closing at the high of day on this earnings reaction shows that demand again is the dominant force, and shouldn't be fought. And then we see again more 10-day moving average respect, and then a monster move from 30 to 51 in only a matter of sessions, all coming on huge volume. And what's key here for me is understanding that IPOs trade quickly, and young names that run up quickly also come back really fast. So it's important to know that, if we're long this stock, our sell rules have to be a little bit tighter, our take profit rules have to be a little bit quicker, because they give back gains really easily. And so we see a monster move like this from 120% from the HVC, and at this point on this bar we're up 30% from the 10-day moving average. So that's not sustainable in any fashion. So we could set a stop at the low of this day, and if we didn't want to sell into strength, we could sell on weakness here and keep most of our gains. The following day we obviously get a huge reversal on massive volume, which is almost as high as the initial HVC day. To me, that's a major sell signal. If I'm not selling all of my shares, I'm selling majority of them, as the trend has obviously switched and distribution has become the main force in the market. And then finally, we know that this 10-day moving average has been support. We get a 10-day moving average close, like right on it, again on high distributive volume. If we move forward one session, we get a close below, and more than likely I would have sold all of my shares on this day on a break below this 10-day moving average. So yeah, again, we've covered the character of the stock, it can run, how we can determine relative strength, clues, and kind of understand where, if a stock's showing relative strength and being supported on market weakness, on market strength, it should zip up. So something else that's kind of a nuance is the 26.3 million share float. That means basically when strong demand comes into the stock, it's going to turn over the float, and they're going to own a bunch of shares if they want to fill out a 10 million share position. So when demand comes in, it runs quick. When supply comes in, it falls back quick. So that's kind of just the character of low float IPO names. Moving on to the fundamentals, we can see that if we switch over to MarketSmith here, that it's at the time and before it IPO'd, it was very strong fundamentally. EPS numbers were triple digits and increasing. And then when we IPO'd in the September quarter, the numbers were absolutely insane as well. So that's obviously will add to our conviction. If we look at the number of funds during the IPO quarter, we have 58, and then just one quarter later we have 132. So almost a double, or greater than a doubling of funds, which is super key, showing us that there's clear institutional demand, which is something we've already seen on the charts, but it's just confirmed in this number. And at the time, I don't know the other names per se that were acting well, but I do know that the gaming sort of theme was hot at the time. So, to resume, RS out of IPO, created an RS zone, and then accelerated the RS line once market pressure lifted. That's a recipe that we're probably going to see over and over again, especially on names that are going to be institutionally held. To move on, we have this HVC characteristic with the highest volume since IPO day, another large winning characteristic and edge that we're going to study in the markets. Support at this area, which again is what we're expecting based on this demand, and then a massive run-up where if we're obeying our sell rules and our profit-taking rules, we came out with a large winner. Finally, build more conviction on the fundamental side and the group strength. No IBT or IOF data because this goes back longer than the database allows, but I believe, if I remember correctly, there was some institutional transactions in this area, which would make sense based on just how it was supported. Awesome. Well, that was it for CRSR. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any suggestions or future recommendations, please leave them in the comments below, and we'll see you next video. Thanks.